Hi, I'm Shoestring Jane. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things thrifty, frugal and money saving. And the question today is, can you be too frugal? I mention this because the other day I found myself saying to somebody, well, you can't be too frugal, can you? And then I thought, well, actually, no, you can. You probably can be too frugal. There are points where frugality tips over into, I was going to say hilarity, but it's probably not really that hilarious sometimes. It can tip over into meanness and being somewhat Scrooge-like. How frugal you want to be is all down to you and your personal circumstances. So you may be able to be absolutely massively frugal for a short period. For example, perhaps you've got debts and you really just want to get them paid off. Or perhaps you are saving for something in particular. You have a financial goal, you're saving for a house deposit, or you're saving for your dream holiday. So you're going to do without things and cut down as much as possible in order to get to your goal as quickly as possible. But it depends on your circumstances. So again, I'm not saying that if you are living in really dire straits that you have any options, really, you have any choice. But for those of you who perhaps are on a tight budget, you do have a choice, but you do need to be careful. It may be that you are as frugal as you need to be to pay the bills and to get by. So at this point in my life, I tend to be saving money on certain things in order to sometimes spend on other things that maybe add value to my life and things that I really, really want to do, because I'm just at that point where I don't have children anymore at home, so I don't have that kind of financial drain. I don't have a mortgage, and also I'm in my 60s now, and I think there's certain things that, my quality of life is improved by the occasional holiday or a day out or a trip to the cinema or a meal out and those kind of things. So, I'll do what I need to do day to day in terms of frugality in order to be able to do the things that add value to my life. But being frugal and being tight are two different issues. And being frugal and being dishonest are also two different things. So when do I think being frugal is too much? This is just my personal opinion. You might have different opinions, so do honestly let me know in the comments below, because it's always interesting to hear a different perspective. But this is what I think. I think taking more than you really need and being greedy just because something is cheap or it's free, just taking it to be greedy, or just because it's free and you think, oh, I've got to have it. And I have to stop myself doing this. I do pick up freebies, as you know, on my way around my little town, but I also leave a lot. So I try to pick up things that I know I will use, but leave things that I think other people would use. And I'm also thinking about yellow stickers. So you get those people, not many, I don't think many people are like this, but you get people who go in and will just scoop up all the really good bargain yellow sticker prices when they're discounts after things like Christmas holidays and the Easter holiday, and things like meat and fish are on really a good discount because they've overstocked. And I was an occasion when I was in Asda and a lady, actually, she had scooped up all of these big whole salmon that were remarkably cheap. They were down to £3. My daughter had told me about them. She picked up one. I said, oh, sorry, I should have got you one, Mum. And I shot round to Asda because I thought I do want one of those. And this lady had 3 or 4 in her trolley. And I must have looked really disappointed because she gave me one, which is great, which is all I need. So, but it's thinking about other people who are coming along. Obviously, you don't want to waste food. So, looking at people around you and thinking, actually, if they're looking like they're interested, there are, maybe there are 4 meat pies there that are all reduced and they look like they're interested. Don't take the 4, maybe just take 1 or 2. So I think that is being fair. Taking too much is not being frugal, it's being greedy. And also I think is a certain type of dishonesty where, for example, somebody gives you change of a £20 note or $20 note and you only gave them 10. So I would have to tell them. So, they get into trouble if their tilly's wrong at the end of the day. So I don't want to get anyone into trouble in order to gain a tenner. So I think that, again, that's not being frugal, that's just being dishonest. Similarly, if you have a stay at hotel and you leave with all of their towels and all of the free products that are for your use there, then I think that's being a bit greedy. And particularly the towels, I think, in the end, that is theft, because they're there for you to use, but they're not there for you to take away. So, if you can afford to go and stay in a hotel, you can afford not to steal the towels. And so I was thinking about a few things that perhaps I've tried or I've heard about that I think are just really too frugal for me. I'll give you some examples. Diluting milk. I mean, I do dilute things. When the girls were here, I used to dilute juice because they guzzled so much of it. I couldn't dilute it that much, but they were guzzling it too much and it just disappeared, and then they're all moaning there was no juice. Whereas if I diluted it a little bit, it lasted a bit longer. But diluting milk, it didn't work because it just didn't taste very nice. And if, for example, mostly nowadays we use it in our tea and coffee, so we want a certain amount of milk in our tea and coffee, and if we don't have it, we just end up putting more in. So it's pointless. All you're doing is adding cold water to your tea and coffee. With things like cereal, you could probably get away with diluted milk. Certainly in porridge, I don't use all milk. I use a tiny bit of milk and mostly water. So you get away with it some things. But generally speaking, diluting milk is a step too far for me. And the other thing, talking of milk, is using powdered milk and replacing all of your fresh milk with powdered milk. And I used to see this come up a lot on frugality forums in past years, and people used to save themselves quite a lot of money. But when I tried it, it tasted really horrible. It didn't taste nice at all, not to use as fresh milk. And it kind of settled on the bottom. You were constantly having to whisk it up, and that was a step too far for me. I would use powdered milk in sauces. I think you can get away with it, not problem in sauces. But powdered milk, just as a general frugal step, is a step too far for me. So another false economy, I think, is buying cheap plastic footwear. I've done this in the past and regretted it. It doesn't last 5 minutes. It's not comfortable. They make your feet sweat and they break really quickly. So it's a false economy. I think in my case, I buy secondhand anyway, but I would rather pay more for a decent quality pair of shoes, even if they're secondhand, and considerably more for a pair that will last longer than buy cheap plastic shoes. And of course, this can apply throughout everything that you might purchase. So a better quality electrical item is probably a good buy. If you buy something really, really cheap that's not really built to last, then you could end up buying twice, as they say, buy cheap, buy twice. So there are other things, really nice wooden furniture rather than bits of fiberboard, chipboard furniture, which really are not built to last. I think again, buy secondhand to get the quality. That's what I do. Another thing I thought was a step too far was me and Queen Life After Money. She's marvellous in lots of ways, but one of her frugal tips is to wear boys' pants rather than women's knickers, because they are reinforced and they last longer and they are much cheaper to buy. I guess you don't have to pay VAT on children's clothing, do you? I mean, for me, I think my bum would be too big for boys' pants anyway, but I just don't want to wear boys' pants really. So that's a step too far for me. Good for Ilona for sticking to her guns though. And another thing I've come across people doing is using what they call family cloth instead of toilet paper. So sometimes people don't use it for number twos, they use it for number ones, but sometimes they use it for everything. So basically it's like a reusable nappy. You wipe and have a little bin, maybe full of sterilising fluid or whatever, and then those things go in the washing machine. That, I just don't want to do that. I don't know how I'd explain that to my visitors. I don't think my daughters would ever visit me again if I made them use family cloth. So no, that's a step too far for me. And also, I think taking frugality too far is where you won't celebrate anything. So, some people just don't do Christmas and they don't do birthdays or any kind of whatever your religious celebrations are. They don't want to join in with anything because it costs them money and they would rather not do it. So, but for me, I think those occasions they're times to be valued. They're an excuse to get together with people, with friends and family. And I would like to put some money aside to enjoy those occasions. Doesn't mean I'll buy presents for everybody. I'll only buy presents for a few people and mostly just family, and we agree what we're going to buy. We agree on a Secret Santa in my family. But, you know, I wouldn't say to my kids, well, sorry, no, I don't believe in Christmas. I don't believe in spending money on that. So I'm not going to join Christmas. I think it has benefits, you know, has benefits. And something else that I think is a step too far when it comes to being frugal is to buy an item of clothing, wear it with the labels on, and then return it. I think that's actually going back to that dishonesty thing, isn't it? A lot of those clothes, a lot of returns with big companies like ASOS and H&M, they just end up in big pallets somewhere. They could go anywhere. They might end up in landfills. So that's one good reason not to do it. But also, you know, that company is taking a hit. Even if you don't like those companies, if you're a customer of them, you need to respect them, I think, or don't use them, go somewhere else. So I would never do that. I would never buy something, wear it once and then send it back. And similarly, I have heard, it hasn't happened to me as a reseller, I've heard of people buying secondhand clothes that people are selling and clearly wearing them. They come back smelling of cigarette smoke and they say there's something wrong with them, as a fault or something like that. Or I watched Nick Hill's, he is a reseller, this quite a number of years ago. He was selling on Amazon and somebody had bought an item from him, claimed it didn't work, and actually replaced it with an item that was the same model exactly. I can't remember what it was now. It was an item of electrics, and sent back the same thing, but it was a different model and it didn't work. And I mean, that to me, that's just plain dishonest. You know, if you're really, really short of cash, you probably don't need whatever that thing is. So just don't buy it. Just don't be dishonest and make somebody else's life difficult. And despite being called Mama Scrooge once in the Daily Mail, I have always allowed my family fun and treats. I think it's really important. So, I mean, I think it's a step too far with frugality when you don't allow treats and you don't build them into your budget. I think it's really important, otherwise you start to feel really deprived. So I think as well, you're the one that's chosen the lifestyle. So if it feels as though you're imposing it on people around you and they're not with you, I think that can be counterproductive. So I think you've got to have a few treats to kind of bring people on board. And another example was when my mum and dad moved house once and we arrived really late to the new house. We were all kids, it was dark, and the people that had just moved out had taken the light bulbs with them. Well, Mum and Dad didn't have any light bulbs to hand because everything was packed. So there was an actual mad scramble trying to find torches and things, trying to find neighbours who might have a spare light bulb so we could actually get in for the night and see where we were putting things. So that's proper Scrooge, that's proper meanness, taking the light bulbs with you when you move house. And I also think saving money doesn't mean freeloading from family and friends. So you might be invited out and you can't really afford to go, but you go anyway, and then you expect everybody else to pay for all your drinks and give you cigarettes if you smoke and buy your meals if you're going out to a restaurant. And, you know, if somebody says to you, I know it's your birthday, I would really like to treat you to a meal out, or let me buy you a drink for your birthday. But if you're in the pub and you're accepting rounds of drinks from other people and you are not stepping in, putting your hand in your pocket, I think that's a bit mean. So I would personally either in that case not go if I really couldn't afford it, or I'd go but say on a tight budget, I'm just going to buy my own drink. Is that okay with everybody? Most people really don't mind that. Or I just buy one round and just stick with that. And another false economy is not putting the heating on when you can afford to at all. I mean, I try to save on my heating bill. I'm always trying to put layers on and use a heated blanket and those kind of things rather than instantly heating the whole house. However, in the past, we went too far with trying to save money on our heating and we ended up with a lot of black mold and condensation. And that was really horrible. It's not good for your health and it was a false economy. So you need to heat your house to a reasonable temperature if you can possibly afford it. And otherwise it just gives you more problems in the long run. And I did read this once from somebody's frugal blog where they didn't go to a wedding because they didn't want to buy a gift and they didn't want to buy a new outfit. And I thought, what a shame. You have been invited to somebody's wedding. They clearly want you to be there. So are they going to care if you turn up in a dress or a suit that you already owned, or you went to the charity shop and bought something reasonably cheap? And if you just bought a token kind of gift, or even no gift, if they're asking you to be there, they're not demanding you buy them an expensive gift. So the way I get around things like that is I would normally buy something that looks really nice, but doesn't cost me a lot of money. So perhaps I would buy, if it was a friend, if it was a family member, I would budget for it and buy something from their wedding list. But if it was a friend, maybe someone I wasn't like super close friends with, but they'd asked me to go to their wedding, I would buy something like something for their garden, like a plant for the garden, or a lovely house plant, and something that you can tie ribbons around. It looks really nice, and most people would be pleased to receive that. So there are ways around it. I think you miss out on occasions and memories. Sometimes, you're being mean again. I think it's not worth missing out on everything just to save a few pennies. Another false economy is trying to repair things that you are not qualified to repair. So I'm really not talking about general DIY. Me and Justin will have a go at most things. I'm thinking about things that a specialist would need to do. So somebody looking at your gas boiler, you don't want to be messing about with that. Even plumbing, I wouldn't even mess about with any plumbing jobs because I don't know what I'm doing. Justin did actually put a new tap on the sink, and that's fine. He knew how to do that, but I'd just mess that up, I'm sure. So I wouldn't do anything like that. I wouldn't touch any electrics in the house, and neither would Justin, because we don't know what we're doing and we don't want to cause, power outage, or worse still, a fire or something. So I think that is a false economy. So I think that's worth having an emergency fund to do those kind of things. And on a similar subject, it's neglecting household repairs. So you can ignore things so long, but if you keep ignoring them, it can end up being a much bigger job. So general household maintenance is actually something the frugal person will do, not something they will ignore. I think it's too frugal to go without household insurance as well. So you don't have to get the absolute top household insurance, but you want to know that if your house was to be seriously flooded, or if you had a fire, or if you had a burglary, that you were going to have cover for those kind of emergency situations at the very least, even if you pay quite a high excess and you do have that cover for those really big things. So I think it's too frugal to have no household insurance. I think there's a danger when you get into frugality of taking things too far, and you get so used to not spending money and to doing things a certain way that you almost develop a fear and a phobia of spending money. So sometimes when it's in your interest to spend money, I've given you some examples of when that might be, you won't do it and you're scared to do it. And actually I think that is taking frugality too far. But people probably still think that I am too frugal in some ways, and there are some things I know that I do that my friends wouldn't do and my family wouldn't do, and people watching this would probably go, I wouldn't do that. So one of those would be, that saying, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. Well, I don't flush the loo every single time if it's just a wee and it's just me in the house. I think, well, if I've got friends coming round, then I would, but and if it's a number 2, yes, it goes down. But it's a small thing, but our water bills do cost money. We are on a meter, so I am aware of our water usage. I think it's all right to buy people second-hand gifts, and sometimes that might mean you can buy them exactly what you want. My daughter really wanted a Le Creuset big casserole dish for Christmas, and she particularly said to me, I'd just love to have a pink one. If you could ever find a pink one, I'd really like one. And I found just the thing on eBay, and I actually couldn't believe it. It was the newer ones, and even some of the second-hand ones people were asking £140 for, and I found one for £60, and I bought that for her. So it was a second-hand item, but it was something she really, really wanted, and she absolutely loves it and uses it all the time. So I think it's fine to buy second-hand. I've also bought vintage items. One year I bought my brother some vintage West Ham United items because he is a West Ham supporter, so he appreciated those. And I also think it's all right to re-gift. I mean, occasionally I get given a lot of the same kind of thing, maybe lots of candles or something like that, and I think I'm not going to use these for years, so I'll put them in my re-gift box. I do have a little box, and you have to remember who gave them to you so you don't give them back. But I think it's actually all right to re-gift. I think it's all right to donate as well if you can afford to do that. But if I'm trying to save money and be frugal, I'll hang on to something that I think, somebody else might actually like this. Something else I personally would do, and I do, is sometimes eat food that's past its best before date or its use by date. I used to actually buy foods more cheaply from various companies that sell foods that are kind of right at the end of their best before date. They're non-perishables. They're things like cans and casserole sauces and bags of crisps and that sort of thing. I would definitely use that. And if I found an old bag of rice or pasta or something and it had gone past its use by date, I'd certainly use it because it's fine. It's not going to do you any harm. I also will consider things that are past their best before. If I give it a sniff and it's just a few days out, give something like a yogurt a sniff. Yogurt lasts ages. It doesn't suddenly go bad on the date that's marked on the carton. You can use your common sense sometimes. If it's been kept cold and it's been kept cold and it smells fine, it looks fine, then I would eat it. I would be a little more careful with meat. So I don't think I'd eat chicken that was a lot out of date. I might eat it a day or two out of date if it smelled okay, looked okay. Things like cheese, they sit around while they're being made. They sit around for ages. So I don't take a lot of notice of that. And I would certainly cut off mouldy bits and eat cheese. So I don't think I'm alone in this, but I'd rather do that than waste food. So that's something I think is okay. Something else I think is all right is to haggle at car boot sales. So I go to a lot of car boot sales and I'll always offer a little bit less unless the storeholder's a child. I'd never do that to a child. Or if they're fundraising, if they say we're raising for a particular challenge or for a particular charity, no, I wouldn't haggle with them then. Or if they looked kind of, down on their luck and like they were selling all their possessions because they're really short of cash, I wouldn't haggle then either. But if it's just your standard person who's had a clear out, then I would. I have no qualms about haggling. I think that's a frugal skill. However, I wouldn't haggle in a charity shop either. So I have seen people trying to haggle in charity shops, but I think, well, the workers in those shops don't really have the power to start reducing prices. They're normally volunteers, so completely pointless trying to haggle in a charity shop. I don't have any qualms about sharing bath water. I think I'm pretty clean, and if somebody else in my household is very clean and they come out of the bath and it's a lot of hot water and it doesn't look like they haven't shaved all their hairy legs off or anything like that, this is my daughter's, then I'd certainly get in their bath water. I mean, years ago, people used to have one bath a week and there'd be like the whole family would use the same water, wouldn't they? So you'd probably come out scummier than you went in. I think that's going too far, but I certainly would share the bath water with one person. However, it doesn't happen very often because Justin doesn't want to share my bath water. He'd rather have a shower. I also don't have any qualms about dyeing my own hair and occasionally cutting my own hair. So I quite often do my fringe. Sometimes I will have a go at my layers. You might say, yeah, it shows. Actually, this haircut was one that I had the other day that I paid money for, and I just thought, I'm not going back to that hairdresser again. I don't think she's done a very good job. I think one side is still slightly longer than the other. Do you think this side looks longer than the other? Sometimes I think I've done a better job myself. So I don't have any qualms with having a little go, cutting my own hair and dyeing it. I also think it makes frugal sense and is not too extreme to make your own cleaning products. So I'm going to be doing some videos in the next few weeks showing you how I make my own cleaning products. Not only are they cheaper, they're full of far fewer chemicals as well. And if you make your own, you avoid a lot of the plastic packaging waste as well. I think the key is in all this is balance, isn't it? So it's important to balance frugality and the reasons why you're frugal with enjoying your life and sometimes spending money on things that really add value to you. So things that are really worth it. And that might be a big, expensive purchase because, it's something that is going to make your life much better. So perhaps you might buy, a caravan, and that might cost quite a lot of money. It might involve a lot of saving up, but it probably means quite a few years of really much cheaper holidays for you. So or maybe you'd be able to go away much more frequently because you had your own caravan rather than having to pay for hotels and Airbnbs. So sometimes, it's just getting balanced. So I think if your frugal efforts require more time and effort than you feel that you save, then you could probably let them go. Or if they're so tiny and other people would really look down their nose at you for doing them, then sometimes you can let those go. Sometimes you can keep them because some people do look down their noses at you, whatever. And I'm sure I'll get one or two comments regarding some of the things I've said in the comments as well. But I think if it's important to do things like pay off your debts, save. Maybe you're saving for an emergency fund or whatever you're saving for. Maybe you've got financial goals and it's important that you reach those, but you only live once at the end of the day. So it's a question of balance, as I've just said already. So if you're happy with your balance and you think that you're not over the top and you're enjoying your life, but you managed to save a bit of money, then you've probably cracked it. I think most of the time I have cracked it. I have made some mistakes in the past, and that means not being frugal enough or being too frugal. Anyway, I'd really be interested in your thoughts on this topic, so do leave them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, give me the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit your notifications bell so you know next time I'm uploading a video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.